I'm gonna call this meeting of the new Hanover County Board of Education to order. Ms. Adams, would you call the roll, please?
Edward B. Higgins.
Here.
Jeanette S. Mitchell.
Here.
Janice A. Kavanaugh.
Here.
Lisa Eastet.
Here.
Donald S. Hayes.
Here.
Bruce T. Shell.
Here.
David L. Wood.
Here. Each one has a copy of the agenda in front of them. Do I hear a motion to approve it, or are there any amendments or deletions from it?
I move for approval of the agenda.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It is approved. First item on the agenda, excuse me, is the public forum on redistricting, the sign-up sheet. I believe I have 9 people who have signed up to speak. I would remind you, it is 3 minutes. We are here to talk about school redistricting. If you would like to speak about some other topic, I would encourage you to come to the March 6th meeting, which is a regular meeting. This is a special meeting for redistricting. And I reserve the right, if you either get off topic, to get you back on topic. It is 3 minutes, and if you go over, I will give you a little bit of time, but I will expect you to wrap it up. And if you have additional information you want to share with the board, you will be permitted to present it in writing. Having said that, the first person I have signed up is Lynn Rooks. Lynn Rooks. Timothy Vandenberg.
Did anybody?
Well, I'm just going, these people signed up online. Nobody signed up in person. Will McFarland. Yes, sir.
I'm new to the area, so this all kind of came together pretty fast. And I mean, maybe it's been in the works for a long time, but I just kind of heard about it maybe 3 weeks ago. And then I'm hearing like, hey, you know, your kids might be going to a different high school. So I want to know, like, why so fast on the decision that is going to affect my children for 4 years? And if the motion is made, it's voted on, hey, your kids aren't going to Laney High School, your kids are going to New Hanover High School, and we don't like that decision, do we have the option to, you know, really don't want to go down the private school road, I want my kid to go to a public school, do we have the option of applying to a different school? Those are my concerns.
Well, sir, what I would tell you is this: the board does not get into a discussion when we ask people. It's like fact finding, if you will. But I will.
Mr. Anderson will answer some of those.
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Part of his presentation.
There's a presentation that's going to come after this, and hopefully that will answer your questions. And if not, then feel free to come back and see us or contact us.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And thank you. Sean Mills. Not Mills. Sean Mills. Angela Davis.
Hi, how are you?
Fine.
I'm getting to know you guys pretty well. I actually wrote something up tonight, so I apologize if I'm not looking right at you. Just today, my daughter was telling me about her class choices for next year at Hanover. While I'm listening, I'm thinking, not sure what school she's going to be going to next year. Do they offer the same classes, have the same resources? With that being said, the latest proposal gave me a ray of hope with the open choice option. That was short-lived. After I was told by numerous high school connections that the option's usually for athletes or people in athletics or gifted children. My daughter is a good student, but neither of those apply to her. I cannot help believe that there is some truth to this. Last year, I tried to get my daughter into Hoggard. I was told that they were at capacity, but the same school is scheduled to roughly get 200 students this coming year. So maybe there is some truth to this. So I started thinking about the need for another high school. So I started researching, and I found that the 2014 school bond that was approved for $160 million, I honestly saw a lot of things in there that I don't feel like the money was well used, and again, it's my opinion. $17 million for a gym and new cafeteria at Hoggard with no instructional classes. $11 million to Laney for a gym and media center, no instructional classes. Don't get me wrong, I do believe in physical education, but I do believe the classroom is more important. I'm looking at the cost of these projects, and I found on the website, and it looks like a lot of these projects have been done or in the process of being done. Future projects are the middle school renovations in Wrightsville Beach Elementary, which roughly total $38 million for the middle schools, $7.3 for Wrightsville Beach, which are all, the Wrightsville Beach is due August 2021. So my suggestion, why not take some of those funds that we have now and at least get some type of temporary trailers, or either add on to Laney, they already have the property, the land, therefore making room for those students. And while that's happening, yes, we do need another bond because we'll have to replace the money that we just used on Laney. This problem is only going to get worse. Even our mayor, Bill Sappho, expressed his concerns. So in closing, I have two questions. Per the PowerPoint tonight, only 10% favored redistricting. What about the other 90%? And can someone tonight guarantee my daughter her open choice to stay at New Hanover? Thank you.
Thank you. Deidre Corden. Deidre Corden. Crystal Morgan.
Hello. I'm here to ask the board members to please consider two other options. A, to delay the redistricting for another year so that there is more time for better planning instead of a rushed decision that really does not fix the problems. Or B, to allow our students to remain at their current high schools. If you opt not to delay the process and the redistricting has to take place this upcoming school year, let it begin with the rising freshman class. Please extend the junior-senior privilege down to the rising sophomore class as well. Let our children finish high school where they started. Please understand that moving high school students already established at their school is very different than moving elementary or middle schoolers. This kind of move is affecting their transcripts, their college resumes, and it is affecting their future. Getting into college has gotten very competitive. One of the things looked at for admission is class rank. A student that has already established a top 3 rank at their current school is not guaranteed the same at a different high school. They may not even be guaranteed a top 10 ranking at the new school. This is very detrimental to their resumes that they've worked so hard to establish. Another thing to consider is that all of the high schools offer their classes in different orders, and they need different prerequisites for the classes. So having to switch schools would be a very difficult transition, causing even more stress for our teenagers. These students have carefully planned out their entire high school schedules with their school counselor and/or AIG specialist for their current school. You should also consider their school clubs and sports. They have already established relationships with these teachers, mentors, and coaches. They may be up for a captain's position on their team or an elected position in one of their school clubs. Moving to a different school takes those positions away. They don't have the relationships with the administrators, coaches, and teachers at the new schools. With sports being so competitive now, there may not even be a spot available for them on the team at a different high school. Please consider these students' mental health as you decide to toy with their future and as you tear them away from their friends, their classmates that they have gone to school with for the past 10 to 12 years, and away from the relationships and bonds that they have formed with their coaches, the faculty, and the administrators at their current school. I truly feel that this redistricting is being done in an unnecessary rush, and it could really use more time planning and definitely more consideration of the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Jill Stockman.
Hi, my name's Jill Stockman, and I live in Landfall, and I have a 7th grader, and so we're just now starting to think about high school. But I wanted to say that I was thrilled to hear that we might be redistricted to New Hanover, so I was very, very excited about that. I wasn't quite as excited when I heard that they might take out some of the Forest Hills neighborhoods and Glen Mead, and I was wondering why they would do that, but I just wanted you to get some feedback that I would be very excited to be redistricted from Laney to New Hanover. I have a 7th grader, so he's not, doesn't have any connections right now, but I just at least wanted you to hear that.
Thank you. Judy Justice.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I had 2 older children that went through the whole school system, K through 12, earlier, and now I have 2 children living at home with me that are in the schools, elementary and middle school, that are my grandchildren that I help care for. And I'm concerned about what's going on because I'm also a retired educator. In fact, I worked at Laney through all the 90s and also went into school administration. I've been a principal, assistant principal, and worked in central office. And what I am seeing here, this is very rushed. And I think we do need more input. And one of the things I'm concerned about is I guess your guiding principles that I've looked at pretty closely. They're pretty, in ways I'd say, vague, and they're not necessarily based on any education research that is solid because there is such a broad field to them. One of the things I'm concerned about is economic integration, which is when the people came and spoke last meeting that we had about New Hanover, that was one of the things they were mainly concerned about, the fact that New Hanover was getting a large amount of free and reduced lunch children that in the past they hadn't had as many. But now the thing is that economic integration, according to the major study, says if you have no more than 40% students in a school that is in that category, then the whole school district benefits. In fact, a good example of that's Wake County, which is one of the most successful and is nationally recognized. They have no more than 40% of their children in any one school on free and reduced lunch, plus they don't allow any more than 25% academically, not at grade level. So this is the kind of thing we need to be looking at when we're looking at redistricting. And as far as the high schools go in New Hanover, you had sent the agenda out, and I looked at that closely, and I'm going, well, wait a second now. This is good. New Hanover, it's gone down. As I think it was from 49% during the first hearing that we had, forum that we had, down to 44% now as far as the ratio of free and reduced lunch. But then I'm starting to think, during that conversation and the subsequent question and answer period, you were talking about the fact that New Hanover's in a special, as far as free and reduced lunch program, that gives it very hard, makes it hard for you to have the data to actually show what's going on. So I don't know for sure whether that number is really accurate. And I look at the other, at least one other high school's got 25% free and reduced lunch. And I'm going, and their borders are right next to each other. More can be done to make the schools equitable, which will bring success for our kids. It's proven success. And if you'd slow down and use that kind of criteria also and explain it to us, the public, a little bit better, I'd feel a heck of a lot better. So this is why I came out tonight, and I did want to express my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. That is everyone who I have who has signed up to speak. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Deidre Condon. I went to the wrong 13th Street. Would I be able to speak?
You're Deidre Condon?
Yes, I am.
All right. If nobody has any objection.
Thank you. Good evening. We moved here 4.5 years ago. It was because our oldest daughter was going to be starting 9th grade. When we put our house on the market, my husband and I knew we had a very small window of time to work with. If our house didn't sell in time for our girls to start 6th and 9th grade at the start of the school year, then we weren't leaving New York. Our house did sell in time for the new school year, and we moved to the Ashley District in 2013. We as parents knew disrupting our children's education in the middle of their high school years would be detrimental. We weren't willing to do that, and yet you are. A study published by the United States National Library of Medicine in January of 2013 found that students who transfer schools during their high school years are the students who have higher dropout rates. The study also suggests moving students during their high school years negatively affects their test scores, and these students are also less likely to attend a selective four-year college as compared to their peers who were not transferred. By making these students transfer in the middle of their high school careers, you are creating more risk factors for them, making it more difficult for them to be successful students. I have a petition signed by over 100 tax-paying citizens who live in New Hanover County, who believe what I believe. Let the students who are in their current schools graduate from those schools if that's what they want. Start redistricting with this year's upcoming freshmen, as they have not established themselves in a high school yet. This is what I ask of the board. Please help these children succeed in our schools by letting them finish what they started where they started. And just so you know, my petition does not contain any signatures from any New Hanover County teachers. Thank you.
ma'am.
I only took a minute. Is it possible for me to take a couple more seconds?
I'm sorry.
I spoke earlier, but I only took like a minute. Can I just add one thing?
What's this? Yeah, okay, all right.
I also live in Landfall, and I can't wait to hear the whys behind why this school, New Hanover, is a great school to go to. It's like I'm trying to dig and find. I've read some great things online, but I'm just not sure. And you know, when I was looking to buy there, I'm like, all right, what's the high school I'm going to? For 4 years we looked, and it's Laney. Well, let me go see what Laney looks like. Beautiful pine trees out front. Hey, there's the football stadium. There's the baseball stadium. Hey, and there's the tennis courts. It looks nice. You know, it's like, but to just say, hey, it's, you know, now you look for 4 years, you bought a house, we're yanking that out from underneath you without really giving you a chance to do research, and if there's no choice. And I apologize for not being more educated on the situation, but I hope that gets addressed and there is some kind of choice. And if it's being forced, it's almost like, well, wait a second. When people buy houses, one of the first things they look at is where the kids are going to school. And maybe if I get a chance to do more research, I'll be like, hey, New Hanover is the better school, and that's a good thing. But so anyway, I just wanted to add that. So thanks.
Thank you.
And I forgot to mention, distance-wise, it's exactly 4.5 miles to Laney High School and a lot easier roads to get there. And it's 6.5 miles to get down here. And that's only 2 miles, but it's probably a half an hour if you hit all the lights and all the nonsense getting down here. So now you got parents with an extra maybe 30 minutes commute if you're hitting it at the wrong time, both directions, working parents, you know, who knows? I mean, it's a factor. How far away is the school, all the things about it, how it looks and all that. And I think to have that be yanked out from underneath you without some choice is tough to take. So thanks.
All right, that is everyone that I have had who had signed up to speak. The next item on our agenda is a review by Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight we are presenting staff's recommendation for high school redistricting. Let me get this going. Sorry about that. The guiding principles were adopted by the board October 3rd of last year, and we believe that option 1B best meets these principles. The timeline was adopted by the board January 9th of this year, and in accordance with the timeline, tonight we're presenting the final plan for your consideration. Just in review, option 1 was presented to the board first, January 9th, and since then we've received public comment, input from the board. At the last meeting, there seemed to be some consensus among the board members that option B was the best option. You asked us to take a look at some questions and concerns, which we've done, and we'll address those as part of the presentation. So First, let's take a quick review of option 1B, which is being recommended tonight. This is a list of the modifications that are included in 1B. Forest Hills and Glen Mead from Hoggard, or moved from Hoggard back into New Hanover. Village at Greenfield is moved from Ashley to Hoggard. The Hoggard district line was moved a little further south to incorporate Tesla Park in the complete neighborhood of Georgetown. And landfall in option 1B is moving from Laney to New Hanover. And the Hoggard district was shifted north above Wrightsville Beach Avenue to expand Hoggard into the north of Wrightsville, almost up to UNCW. So those are the modifications that we've made from option 1 that was originally presented and are included in option 1B for you tonight. This is a side-by-side comparison of the two plans. The map on the left is the current high school map, and the map on your right is option 1B that you've seen. These are a list of the study areas that are affected by this change, and there's a total of 782 students, which is approximately 10%, a little over 10% of your high school student population. And again, I know you've seen this before, but the capacity comparison, in looking at the capacity, I think option 1B achieves our initial goal, which was to reduce overcrowding at Laney and at Ashley. And it better balances the high school population among the 4 traditional schools. The free and reduced lunch comparison, option 1B provides the best comparable free and lunch numbers among the 4 traditional schools. Hoggard's percentage went up significantly, and as noted, New Hanover's percentages went down significantly. Throughout the redistricting process, these are some of the main comments and input that we've received. It hasn't been mentioned before, but I think it is important to note that, you know, of the little over 300 comments that we received online, over 10% of those comments were positive and supported option 1B in particular. Diversity at our high schools was a concern, and we believe option 1B is the best plan in meeting that concern. There was a concern about gang activity in the school, specifically rival gangs being assigned at the same school. You know, we did meet with the gang task force, and the gang task force assured us that the redistricting plan as presented does not create any problems with gangs in schools. There's a concern of transportation costs. We've reviewed the plan with Transportation Department, and they feel there would not be any change in transportation costs, and actually maybe a little less in option 1B. Splitting neighborhoods, option 1B with the modifications that we've made does not split any neighborhoods. The neighborhoods of Crosswinds, Wedgefield, Hidden Valley, and Woods Edge, those are 4 separate neighborhoods. There was a comment that we move the district line north to Mohican Trail. And after looking at that, we do not recommend doing that. As I mentioned, the current map shows the line between Hidden Valley and Woods Edge. We're not splitting any neighborhoods. And moving it north would move too many students back into Ashley. And like I said at the beginning, you know, our goal was to bring the population at Ashley and Laney down. There's been some concern about Kings Grant and Coville Farms. Again, the purpose of redistricting was to alleviate overcrowding at Laney. We feel that moving Kings Grant and Coville Farms does this, especially in option 1B. We think it makes more sense since we are recommending moving landfall as well. So these have been the majority of the comments and questions. And I say majority, we've actually been going through each and every one and categorizing them. So we've received more comments regarding these items listed than anything else. So tonight we are recommending approval of high school redistricting option 1B as presented with the following considerations. We recommend that you maintain open choice. You do not freeze open choice for any period of time. You maintain the availability of the signature programs that are at our high schools. You offer junior-senior privilege without transportation, which is not a change, but I wanted to be clear on that. And we offer sibling privilege without transportation as well. At this time, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Questions?
Could you elaborate on what you mean by open choice?
Maintaining the open choice that we currently have.
Can you explain
Dr. Holiday may be able to do a better job of that
Yeah.
since he handles the student assignments on a regular basis.
Just in and out.
Thank you for the opportunity. Good evening. Absolutely. Open choice is when parents can apply during the enrollment season once they get their student assignments, and that will be coming out in early March. They can apply for open choice to any of our schools, and those selections are made based on space availability. We do a blind lottery for those spaces available at those schools, and once they have been notified that they have either been accepted or approved for the open choice of their school of choice, if they have been denied, then they have the opportunity during that season to appeal, and the appeal process goes directly to the board, and those hearings are generally held in late June.
I'd like to ask a question about the signature programs.
Can
we just ask
follow up?
a question about open choice?
Yeah, I saw it.
You mind if I?
Go ahead. I just wanted to follow up.
Go ahead.
How do you decide how much availability is at each high school?
Well, at the high schools, it's a little bit different than in the elementary schools, because the high school enrollment is a little more flexible in that we're not looking at, okay, in an elementary school, you've got to have a certain number of children in like a first grade classroom. You're going to have varying sizes in the high school. You may have a PE class with 45 kids in it. You may have an AP Chem class with 14. And you're going to have anything in between that. So we look at the amount of in and out with those high schools. If there are students coming out and the back out of, like going to Wex or going to Isaac Bear or going to Mosley, or any of the other signature programs that are coming out, we look at can they accommodate students coming in. And generally, we're able to accommodate some based on the in-out, but in some years in high schools, it's difficult to accept any large numbers of children, because even though there might be some space according to in-out, according to the capacity, overcapacity, if a school is severely overcapacity like Laney was last year or before the additions, then it's very few children that we can accept into a school like that.
Mr. Shell, do you have additional questions?
Just to follow up, Dr. Holliday, you just explained that we added a gymnasium with classrooms.
Yes, sir.
So that dropped the
It did.
overcapacity
That's
from
correct.
600 and some down to 395.
Yes, sir.
We also added classrooms beyond the gym. There was a library, when we added the library, we converted the old library to classrooms.
Thank you.
Yeah, often, yeah.
So my question
I'm
would
sorry.
be, if we had open choice for the upcoming new school year, would Laney be able to take any additional kids with the overcrowding that they have today?
It would certainly depend on the numbers that are coming out. And generally speaking, and again, please don't hold me to this because we don't know, but generally speaking, and has been historically throughout the years of this, generally Laney has a larger number of students coming out to go to the signature programs, not in the signature programs necessarily, but the other programs such as WEX and Isaac Bear and those other programs, they have a larger number of children applying into those. Plus, they have students who apply into IB and to at Hoggard and Lyceum into New Hanover. So you have those programs that seem to take off a number of children from Laney. So it would depend on those numbers and that would get in. Historically, a very low number.
Do you work with a capacity number when you're doing
We
that?
do. We start with Mr. Anderson's numbers of building capacity, but again, it's not as hard and fast as it would be in an elementary school where you're restricted, especially in grades K-3. We also work with the principals at particular grade levels and particular areas, how many they could handle. So it's a little bit more flexible, you know, and as I work with you all in the appeal hearings in June, we always go over that and make sure that, you know, you all understand the numbers that we had and we looked at. But when we sit down and look at open choice for high schools, we will sit down with Mr. Anderson, Dr. Markley, myself, and Ms. Angevine, and go over what we think is an appropriate number that we can look at based on what we see coming out. And we've been able to accommodate some in each high school as looking at that from that perspective over the years.
An example would be there's a bubble in 5th grade. So when that group hits 9th grade, we would probably be a little more conscious of numbers when that 5th grade bubble hits than the group ahead of it, which isn't as large. So it's every year it looks a little bit different.
Thank you. Mr. Higgins, may I ask a
Yes,
follow-up question?
yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to be blunt, Dr. Holliday. There's 300 or 400 kids that are going to be affected if we approve 1B. I think that was the number that we figured out. Is there any way that, especially this year, we can be a little bit more understanding? We can look at additional data to see if we can accommodate that open choice a little bit more, especially for these children that are going to be moved. Is that a possibility?
Absolutely.
Dr. Holliday, last year, what were the schools that were most, that were not able to accommodate, you were not able to accommodate open choice?
Laney, as you recall, we were slammed at Laney, but again, looking at the fact that we opened that this year, one of the things that the principal has told us is that has alleviated many of those concerns that they had at Laney.
I will tell you, the senior class this year is one of the larger classes that'll be graduating, so that'll impact the school numbers as well.
Mr. Hayes, you had a question?
Well, a couple of points. And I think Dr. Holliday kind of answered one of mine as far as with the signature programs in the schools, whether it be at Ashley or at Laney with the STEM program or the marine science. And also with the space situation with open choice. I don't see how we can be successful with that if those are the two schools that we're trying. I think Hanover and Hoggard we could certainly accommodate with the signature programs that they have there. And that bothers me because there has been so much added to this, which initially what I was in favor of was waiting until we do the middle schools and do it all at one time because there's so much up in the air as far as the what's going to happen at Murray, which is overcrowded, what's going to happen at Noble, which is overcrowded, what are we going to do at Trask as far as the Rock, you know, where College Park is now. There's just a lot, you know, going on, and then it seems like we're throwing in, which I'm not opposed to, the junior-senior privilege and even the sophomore privilege that people are talking about, sibling privilege, but I think if we go down that road, it is so, I think by the time the smoke clears and the dust settles, you're going to look around and nobody moved. And I just don't know how we can accomplish that because I think that we as a board, the last thing we want to do is do something that 2 or 3 years from now we're going to have to undo or move again. And I personally feel that I received an email today, and Dr. Holliday, I'm not sure, they're filling out cards at Laney, for their course selections for next year. They're doing that right now. And here we are, you know, struggling to make a decision as to whether or not they're going to be at Laney next year. So I just believe in the more choice we can provide for parents and their children, the better off we are. And I just think right now that with everything up in the air, I'm just hesitant to even consider moving forward. That's just my opinion.
Ms. Kavanaugh, you had a...
Mr. Chairman, I move that we
Wait,
postpone.
whoa. We're not to the point of making motions.
Why are we not at the point of
Because we're still
making a
having
motion?
discussion.
I'm willing to wait till everybody's
Well,
questions are
that's,
asked.
well, I mean, if, let's hold off if you want to make a
I
motion.
said I'm willing to
Okay,
wait.
all right. Other question, yes, sir.
I have a comment to make. Mr. Hayes, I think you did kind of hit the nail on the head there that, you know, we look at these and we make sure we give the parents some options. But honestly, as I sit here and I looked at last year, we had 700 kids over at Laney, and the year before we had 700 kids at over. It strikes me that this board has had the opportunity to actually address some of these issues, whether it be population issues, whether it be socioeconomic issues, and they've refused to do so. And I think that we're at a point now where we've heard from some parents. I think with these privileges, we're attempting to accommodate as many students and disrupt as few students' lives as possible, especially since, you know, you heard Dr. Holliday talk about being more lenient for the open choice, because I think you actually have some families out there that are excited about some of these changes. And the ones that aren't excited about the changes, let's see if we can accommodate them so it doesn't disrupt it. But we've begun this process. We've looked at a lot of the information. We've addressed some of the socioeconomic issues. I just think that we've been doing this since August when we first started. In October, when the plans were actually, you know, proposed to the public. November, when Mr. Higgins reviewed the maps. December, January, February, and I know we're at a position where we have to make a decision, but the momentum that we have and some of the issues that we've addressed, I think that postponing it for another year and not deciding on any maps is just going to put us in the same exact position next year. But we're going to also have some of the same overpopulation problems that we have next year. And it's just, if you're really doing this for the students to make sure that they're learning properly, we shouldn't have classrooms with 40, 45 kids where people don't have desks. And we have an opportunity to address those issues. So that's my feeling.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Wortman used the word privilege, and that's what we will be affording. Children who cannot provide their own transportation, or the families who can't afford to get them there, they have no privilege. That's not fair. Open choice is not open choice for all families. And I know that we looked at the cost of transportation, but how can you say to a child, you can't apply to go there because you don't have transportation and we're not going to provide it? That's not fair. And that's something to really think about.
Mr. Anderson, let me ask you a question then. As Mr. Wortman suggested, in the past, Laney has been as much as 600 or 700 over capacity. If nothing were done, what would be the overcapacity at Laney this coming year, roughly? I know you can't give me an exact number, but.
Well, there are currently 395 students over capacity. We would have to look at what the incoming ninth grade and the outgoing senior class was and any projected growth. I could tell you.
Would that not be in that 395? Or
No, that's the current.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I've just got high school totals. I don't have the individual school totals. But, I would say that they would be, pretty close to where they are this year at 395 students over.
Well, Dr. Markley just said that they have a very large graduating class. So I would assume that would mean, unless we've got a big bubble in 8th grade, that they would be slightly less than that.
They could be. I mean, typically our ninth grade is the highest class, the largest number of students.
Yes, it is. Well, my question is this. Obviously, I don't want this board to go through a redistricting only to have to redistrict again in 4 or 5 years. And, I as I said when we first started this whole process, I said it was like writing a paper. You get something down on paper, and then you edit it. And you take stuff out, you put stuff in, you correct spelling, you correct syntax and all that stuff, and you end up with what might not be an A paper, but it ought to be a B+ paper. In the months that we have been involved in this, I mean, we have had, a lady came today, suggested, why don't we build another high school? The fact is, we can't afford another high school, and we don't have any land for another high school. But we do have some plans for Laney and Ashley, utilizing Murray and Trask. My question is this, and I simply throw it out. I don't want anybody to get either excited or upset about it. But my question is this: with the high schools, if we didn't do anything but moved forward with a plan to incorporate the 2 middle schools into the high schools as probably, call them the 9th grade wing or whatever you want to call them, but something like that, and then construct, with the idea of constructing 2 additional middle schools to replace the ones we're taking away, and then to talk about a bond issue. Can you give me an estimate of how long that would take us to start with? That's my first question. How long do you think it would take us before that could be implemented? If we did a bond issue, and I'm going to just pull a number out of the air, I'm not suggesting we're going to do it then, but if we were to ask the county commissioners for a bond issue in, say, 2020, how long, if we had started planning with the expectation that people of New Hanover County have been very generous to the school system, I don't think we have ever lost a bond issue. And I don't say that other than to say that I'm very proud of the people of New Hanover County who have been willing to support education. So assuming we could go forward with the idea that we would be able to get this bond issue, and we would be able to build these 2 middle schools, and be able then to incorporate the 2 existing middle schools into the existing high schools. In your estimation, if we started planning, what would be probably the earliest that we could do that?
I think once we were given the green light, so if a bond passed and we were given the green light to start design, you were looking at 4 years at the Sidbury site and 5 years at a site to be determined for the south. And that extra year is going to be required for property acquisition as well as site development.
All right, so you would be talking probably 2024, 2025 if we got a 2020 bond issue.
Correct.
It's he's talking 4 years past whatever date you have a bond.
Right, 2024, 2025, okay. All right.
Mr.
The other thing is, we have seen some demographics. Now, they suggest that our school population is not going to grow like it has in the past. In the years I have been on this board, I have seen this school system grow from about 17,000 students to as many as 26,500 or something like that. The thought is that we may grow another 500 or 1,000 students, and they may be in the high school level. But we also understand, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, that that's in the North Laney district, and in the South, the Ashley district, that we don't see a lot of growth going on in New Hanover or Hoggard. Is that a fair statement?
That's true. I think what we are starting to see is some turnover in neighborhoods within the Hanover and Hoggard districts. That's the growth you're going to have in the center part of the county.
Okay. So, if the demographer is right, and we're not going to see a large school population, we are not going to see humongous overcrowding between now and say 2020, 2021, 2022, or something of that nature. That's the way I read the demographers report.
2021, and the most, the biggest impact on our high schools is going to be when that current fifth grade bubble goes into our high schools in 2021, 22.
But that's 1 year, right?
And it'll be, that's the school year.
What does the fourth grade look like?
It'll, fourth grade drops significantly.
Okay.
I mean, you can track, you can actually track that, that bubble through the schools. And, when you can see our high school population jump up significantly, and the year you graduate that senior class, you see about we're saying a 2.45% reduction in a high school population.
So if we did not do anything to the high schools right now, the likelihood is Asher would remain about 300 to 400 over capacity. Not Asher, I'm sorry, Laney. Laney would remain probably 300 to 400 over capacity. Asher would be about 200, 250 over capacity. New Hanover would be somewhere near capacity, as would Hoggard. I mean, that's kind of the way I read the numbers. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think when that bubble does go into the high schools, I mean, we're projecting, 500 to 600 additional students in our high schools as a total, not any individual one, but that's what we're projecting the growth to be.
But even if we move kids today, we're still going to be over capacity in the north and the south.
We are. The thought was to better distribute the high school population amongst the capacity that we have, so that we would be better able to accommodate them.
Okay.
Mr. Higgins, are you suggesting that we not do anything until those middle schools are built? 7 years?
That's a thought. I mean, I'm putting on the table. I mean, as I said, it's like writing a paper. I'm editing the paper as we go along.
So not address any issues for 7 years. Okay.
Well, what we're finding out is there's going to be, will not be, except for this fifth grade that he talks about, any significant growth.
That's if we believe the demographer. I mean, I have significant
Well, I found out
that
the facts that Dr. Markley had been updated, and from what he had, and that according to Mr. Anderson, the demographer was only 2% off.
What you looked at the retreat were 2009 numbers, and as you recall, that was during the economic recession, or really at the start of it, and the effect it had on us. It's very difficult to project enrollment during that time. So we had those projections updated in 2013. Since then, or currently, we're 2.4% below his projections. He's been pretty consistent and accurate with those projections.
So with all the building that's going on, he believes there are very few school-age children moving in, including in River Lights.
He believes and I think River Lights is a great example. I mean, the largest development we have in the county right now, they're looking at approximately 3,000 homes. In meeting with them, they're saying 75 to 80% retirees, maybe 20% families with school-age kids. Now, that's 20% of 3,000 homes. It's still it's a significant number, but I think just driving around, it's obvious that our county is going to grow. I think the impact on the school system is going to be less than we've seen in the past, where growth has been equal to 1 or 2 schools a year, elementary schools at one time. We're now looking at growth of maybe 200 students K-12 each year.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we postpone the decision for high school districting for 1 year.
I've got a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. Now, Any further discussion or questions?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, wait a minute, I won't, all right, who said who said first?
Mr. Shell.
Mr. Shell, go
Go
first.
ahead.
No, I'm trying to keep this organized, so.
Okay, I'm with you. You've got a motion and a second. We've got a really tough issue in my mind. We started out with staff recommending putting this off a year. So we had a lot of discussion about that. And the board voted 7-0 to move forward, and we moved forward to study that. In so doing, we've become more and more aware of a number of issues, and the obvious one is Laney High School with 395 over. And that's been mitigated by the classrooms that Dr. Markley pointed out, as well as the expansion of the gym with some classrooms. Ashley is less than 200 over, and from what I'm gathering from you all, you can live with that. One of the challenges that we had, at least from my perspective, was free and reduced lunch. And we had some schools that had a relatively small percentage. We had New Hanover High School with a much higher percentage. And so many of us, all of us, looked at that to see what we could do through a small redistricting, tweaking, as I think it was called, to try to resolve that, to help out Laney, to help out Ashley. We had an article in our paper Sunday that talked about our region growing at 60% in the next 20 years. But yet our demographer, and in all fairness to the demographer, the state's demographer, says we're not going to grow very much at all. And that, I guess that flies in the face of my common sense meter goes off when I look at that.
Well, they're talking mainly about families with school-age children. The growth is going to be less there.
No question, but we're talking about flat versus growing. And for me, I'm new to redistricting, and I've tried to learn and listen about this and decide for myself what's in the best interest. And no one's going to be happy when you redistrict. It's just the way it is. And so we have to decide what is in the best interest of boys and girls. And if I believe in the demography analysis at the state level and the one that the school system contracted with, then I guess I'm somewhat thinking that I'm in favor of putting it off a year. And the reason I say that is we started out with the analysis. We put a lot of pressure on our staff to deliver. We as a board, I think, put them in a tough spot. They had to put together analysis, and yes, there were some stumbling along, but it was all understandable in the beginning of this. So I guess from my perspective, with all due respect, I appreciate the passion that particularly that Mr. Workman has to try to resolve issues for particularly Laney High School. But in my sense of it, it's been very challenging. I appreciate the comments. The comments have had less sway on me than what I think is right in my mind. That's where I am. That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes. No, David, you go ahead. Yeah.
And I guess I'm confused if we're going to put this off, or is the intention to delay talking about maps for months, so we're back in the same spot next year. I mean, what I've heard so far, we have a motion in a second. I found out that a board member is considering actually not doing anything for 7 years. And it just flies in the face of what we're here for. I mean, we're here to look at the schools, to evaluate where there's overpopulation, where there's socioeconomic issues that we can address to bring fairness to all of our students. And I'm not sure how we can say, let's not do anything when you have schools that are busting in their classrooms without desks available. It's easy to bury your head in your sand and blame city council for the housing or the county commissioners for not giving us funding, but we as a board have an obligation as well. And I think that procrastinating it or putting it off till next year or not doing anything for 7 years, it's not in the best interest of our kids. I truly believe that. So, you know where I stand. I'm going to obviously vote to continue with option 1B, and I hope some board members agree with me.
Do I get to say something?
If you'd like, yes.
I would like.
Well, all you gotta do
I've
is
been quiet
ask.
over here. I haven't been able to get a word in, which is unusual.
Yeah, you have. Go ahead.
I, like Bruce, have kind of sat back and tried to listen. I do appreciate all the comments. I'm a parent of 5 kids, and I've been trying to put myself in the position of what would happen, how would I feel? And I really struggled with thinking about it from the perspective of trying, as I've said before, I think saying to my kids, hey, it's February, in August you're going to go to a new school. And that didn't feel right. At the same time, it does not feel right to continue to allow to have one school to have 20% free and reduced lunch and another school have 49%, and to continue to push that down the road. So my question would be the same as Mr. Wortman's. I would have voted probably for 1B if I could have more assurances that would continue to move that line a little more into equity down the road, but also not have to move any kid until a year from now. But I want to make sure that we don't wait a year to do anything, that we continue to work on these maps so that next year we can actually do something, because we've got to do this. We can't keep pushing this off. We have to do this, and we have to do this for middle school, and we have to do this for elementary. So if we're going to give ourselves the time, let's go ahead and do it now while we have the time.
Mr. Higgins, could I ask a question?
Yeah, did you want to say anything?
I know that this all started because of the overcrowded situation at Laney, but we're still leaving it overcrowded. What bothers me is that, yes, I believe in spending more time and getting it I can't say as right as we should, because I don't know that we can ever do it the way parents want it to come about. But we haven't really addressed the problem, but here's the concern. If we put it off for a year, and I agree with that, I don't want everyone so anxious, okay, next year I still have to move. But yes, I don't know that we can wait 7 years to help correct the situation. But Dr. Markley at the retreat Saturday was talking about each high school, the signature programs would start at an earlier grade level to get the children, the students involved. Like the Lyceum, you don't get there until 11th and 12th grade. But if we started in the 9th grade in encouraging those students or introducing them to what the benefits of that program, we may be able to get more students from other schools to come in. It's important that we listen to these students. I know what they're going through. I never lived more than 3 years until I went off to college, and I finished that one in 3 years. So I know what it's like. But we can't leave them hanging for a year. So we have to continue to get input from the public and from the students. And as Mrs. Eastep said, we can't just wait now until a short period of time next year and say, okay, it's time to think about this again. We need to continue to work with the parents and with the schools to see, we don't want 45 students in a classroom. And I don't know of any that they don't have desks, because we've got abundance of furniture in this county. So that's would be unheard of. So I'm definitely in favor of putting it off. But also, we need to provide information to the community of where we are with working with the county commissioners on trying to get an approval to float a bond. And we need to have the public know, the parents who've supported us in the past and those who aren't parents of children in the school, to know where we are, what our plans are. So it's important right now to start sharing more and more information.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
I carefully worded the motion saying to postpone the decision for 1 year, which wouldn't stop us from doing the investigating and the compiling of data and whatever, but as far as the actual decision, 1 year.
Understood. Yeah.
Follow up with what Mrs. Nichols said, that great minds run together, and that's certainly true, because you just stole all my thunder of what I was getting ready to say about the signature programs, which was another avenue I thought we were exploring at the work session, and then previously that the Lyceum program, for example, building that out to the 9th and 10th grade also would help our numbers there to attract more students. So I think there are some things there that that could be self-fulfilling by what we're doing with the signature programs, particularly at New Hanover. And I did not think Mr. Higgins was suggesting waiting 7 years. I thought you were just seeking information as far as how long it might take as far as the problems with the middle school. So that would certainly help us alleviate the need for another high school, if because we certainly don't have the land or the money. That would be far more practical and take care of our problem. But I believe, as Ms. Kavanaugh stated, it's not like it's just going to come to an abrupt end. I think there's still a lot of fleshing out to do, because as far as numbers, I don't know how you come up with numbers, Mr. Anderson, that if you were to say, okay, we're going to allow sibling privilege, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. That's why I said earlier, I think you went through all that, and the numbers are basically the same. So I think there's a lot of we can do in this area in the coming year without just, because like I said, what scares me more than anything is to make a decision, move someone, and then a year or so later make another decision
Move them back.
that you've got to move again.
Dr. Mark, do you want to say something?
Yeah, guys, I don't have a vote here, so, but you do pay me to give you my opinion, so. You guys have run this race, and you got the finish line in sight. And you're gonna stop and say, let's go back and rerun the race in another year? The concerns that you're gonna hear in another year are the same concerns you're going to hear now. The concerns about students being worried about changing schools. You've postponed that worry for a year. And then you're gonna put that on top of a middle school redistricting, which desperately is needed once we finish up renovations, because they're overcrowded. And some of those voices for high school discussions are going to get lost in that middle school discussion. I understand the concerns, but in terms of the input, you've received more input now through the different means that we've used than you did through entire redistricting processes in the past. Over 300 online comments. I would suspect that if I counted up all the emails that went to board members, myself and Eddie, we'd add another several hundred comments as well. Plus, at this point, I think I count 4 opportunities to speak at open here in these sessions. So the number of comments you've gotten are well in excess of anything you've gotten through past redistricting processes. And I go, it was a 7-0 vote to move forward. So I understand, I mean, I'm pretty good at math and I can figure this one out, but I would just be concerned that we're gonna rerun this same race a year from now and have the same result.
Can I say something?
I guess my question would be, based on what you said, then why was it your recommendation to put it off a year initially?
We made that recommendation. You as a board decided you wanted to move forward, and we moved forward. So once we decided to move forward, we started that input process, and we've got the input. That input isn't going to change by waiting a year.
But why did you want to put it off a year initially?
The initial piece was to do the middle and high school together. I understood that rationale, and that was fine. But once you made the decision to split, we decided we're going to do high schools first. We did that. We opened up the input. We got the input, and we're at this point here with a plan that accomplishes a lot of what you want to accomplish. You don't want to split neighborhoods. We kept those neighborhoods together. You wanted to try to balance the numbers better than what the plan was. We made those adjustments. So if we wait another year, what's going to change? You wanted to fix overcrowding immediately at Laney.
The one thing, another thing that bothers me though, Dr. Markley, is that we're moving children out of a school to another school, and those children from that school coming, we're flip-flopping children for no reason.
And we had input and discussion about slowing the process down. Juniors, we started with just seniors. We expanded that to juniors. We talked about not breaking families through sibling privileges. So you've slowed that process down. And again, it just doesn't, to me, like I said, we've run the race. There's the finish line. We're going to go back to the start line and run the same race again.
Mr. Higgins, can I say something? You mind? Mr. Higgins,
Oh,
can I
go
say
ahead.
something?
Yeah.
We keep talking about the specialty programs and redistricting, and I'm a little bit confused because I was actually involved with Dr. Markley and Dr. Morgan and hopefully developing the new 9th and 10th grade Lyceum program. And it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Markley or Mr. Anderson, that the specialty programs are not affected by redistricting. They never have been affected by redistricting, and it's my understanding is they're also going to be on the agenda in March to come in and talk about how great they are and see how we can expand them, regardless of what happens with redistricting, correct?
That's correct.
So we want to continue these programs, and they're totally separate and outside. It seems like we're mixing those together for some reason. And I know there's a lot of reasons why people are going to, a lot of ulterior motives in terms of why they're going to delay redistricting, but it just seems like we're latching onto this Lyceum thing being part of redistricting, but we're correcting that regardless, right? That's the intention, to expand that program regardless.
I wouldn't say it was expanding. It's below what its historical highs have been. We'd like to grow it back to those historical highs.
Yes. Right.
But with redistricting, if you have been accepted into a signature program, then you stay in that program. You're not.
If you're currently in that program, you stay as well.
Correct.
9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade.
Correct.
And the signature program at Laney starts when?
That one is the four signature programs, and you'll see a full presentation March. Ashley's the smallest one. It's a junior-senior program. STEM is a 9-12 program at Laney. IB is a 11th and 12th program primarily, but you can come in early and do some pre-IB courses. And then at New Hanover, that's a junior-senior program, but we're talking about creating some tracks for 9th and 10th graders who want to do that program.
What did you say about Laney? I missed that.
9-12.
Okay, 9. See, because I'm thinking, if I'm at Laney now and I'm getting ready to get moved, guess what? I'm going into the STEM program. So who's going to move?
You have to apply, is my understanding, and be accepted into it.
But don't you think if you know you're going to be moved and you don't want to be moved, that you would apply? I mean, I think it's...
I'm not sure if it'll be accepted, but yes, I understand that.
Yeah.
Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
I would make an amended motion to accept option 1B.
All right, I have a amended motion to accept option 1B. Do I hear a second to that?
I'll second that for purposes of a vote to honor Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, is there any discussion about option 1B?
I think we all heard what option 1B is. It's moving forward with balancing out some of our overpopulated schools, which hasn't been done in years on this board. It's actually addressing some of the socioeconomic issues, as you've seen by the data, which hasn't been done for years on this board. And it's hopefully moving forward. So I would ask for everyone to consider voting for option 1B.
All right, any further discussion on option 1B? Hearing none, I call the question. All in favor of adopting option 1B as an amended option, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, nay.
No.
Nay. It fails for 5-2. All right, then we're back to the original motion on the floor. That is to postpone redistricting for 1 year. All those in favor?
I would make another amended motion that if we are going to accept postponing, that we establish timelines so we don't wait 7 years to address those problems, and that we at least have a definitive timeline where we can't wait till after certain dates come to move these children around.
All right, just to be clear, what you're asking, you're saying, you're not talking about establishing timelines right today, but to, within the next, by maybe March 6th or something, that they come to us with a timeline?
We can look at timelines right now.
My motion was to delay the decision for 1 year. That doesn't stop the administration from collecting data or from anything from being
When you say
presented toward us.
Decision, what do you mean, decision that we're gonna do?
A vote for 1 year.
Delay the vote for 1 year?
Yes.
So we're gonna have this vote in February of 2019?
We
This
were
is the
going to
same-
have a vote by March about this matter.
But when are we gonna have the
So-
maps available?
When do you
Whenever the
anticipate,
administration gets them to us
when do you anticipate having a vote? In 1 year?
in 1 year.
So we're back here on February 20-something with kids getting ready to be moved in 1 year?
I think his point would be that if you could delay it to impact the next school year, not you know what you're saying, that way you have the ability to talk
Yeah, it's my
about
understanding the motion is to delay the vote for 1 year. So we're gonna be back here in 1 year with the same problems that we have, and we still haven't
We won't
made.
necessarily have the same problems, Mr. Workman.
We're gonna have kids that are gonna be moved out of school.
We're going to have,
What's gonna happen next year with the same problems? We're still gonna be overcrowded at Laney. Free and reduced lunch is still gonna be 49% at New Hanover. And those are
we
the two
have
main.
had complaints from parents that we are doing this too fast.
I'm asking-
We've had complaints from parents asking us to slow down the process, and that's what the motion is, to slow down the process.
So, just so I'm clear, you're asking to postpone the vote for 1 year.
Yes, that's what I said.
What about having the vote within a year?
Yes, I think he's saying,
That's fine.
you don't mean to postpone it till
It
February.
doesn't have to
Exactly.
be on this date of February of next year.
Okay, so as long as it's within the year, but I think what Mr. Wortman is asking is to make sure that we establish the fact that we would have the maps ready much sooner than they were ready this time, so there's
agree
plenty
with
of
I'm
time.
not prepared at this meeting to set a particular timeline, but I am open to setting a timeline.
Why are
But
we not?
I'm not ready right today to set timeline.
Because
That's just me.
a year from now, I mean, that gives staff ample opportunity for these kids in these schools filling out these cards to have time to do it. They're filling them out today. We're possibly making a decision tonight that might affect all that. I think it gives time to get all that done. We could look at numbers again, signature programs. Has there been any shift in there? Might not be as dramatic as what we have to do, but just don't know.
Well, what I'm saying is, I don't wanna, they're gonna be filling out the cards this time next year, so I don't wanna I don't wanna have a vote this time next year.
Well, I
'cause
agree. I think it
we're
needs
at
to
the
be
same-
earlier.
Right.
Plenty of time.
That's what I'm trying to
That's what I'm
say.
saying within.
Well, I don't think it's intended that, this particular date next year. I think next school year, once we see what the numbers are like and so forth.
Mr. Hayes,
And it
that's-
certainly should be plenty of time for people to know
I understand. That was my point. I don't want to delay this 1 year, so we're back in the same position that we are right now.
Right.
Hopefully, it won't take as long this time.
Do you want to include in your motion a time by which we will make a decision? October, November?
Yeah, I mean, what are we in February? I mean, I think that realistically, 6 more months. Is 6 months? End of October.
Say October.
Or let's do September 1 before, so at least people know before when they're starting school where they're going to end up the next year. That's my.
All right, so that would be.
It gives them plenty of time. It gives them, as people have told, a year to plan. So
That would be your motion then.
it would be my motion to decide by the beginning of school in 1920, for the 18-19 school.
18-19 school.
Which is end of August.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I'd like to hear the superintendent's thoughts on what that motion would mean, and could you accommodate it?
We've got a starting plan now, so, I mean, it's not like we're reinventing the wheel here, so, I mean, I can meet in whatever timeline you've got.
6 months would be more than enough for the high school.
Yes.
I would tell you, in the past, the board has gotten together as a group to hash over the segments and where people are going, and I mean, it's been a case of almost like moving segments around to try to accomplish some of these goals. Not necessarily, I mean, the administration gave us a starting point. I have been through probably 5 redistrictings, and they have all taken almost a year, and it's because the board would sit down and talk about, just like happened with Forest Hills and Glen Mead, but they would look at, why are we sending these kids to, say, Ashley, when there's a group over here that are much closer to Ashley or something of that. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? We have looked at the plans, we've looked at the proposed maps, and the board has actually become involved in making those decisions, not just simply adopting decisions that, with all good intentions, the administration has given us.
With all due respect, the last 4 meetings, you've been providing direct input on which districts to move and to move back.
We have been.
Glen Mead and Forest Hills, directly, are 2 examples of that. Landfall's another example. I mean, if you guys want to do that and get into moving those segments, we'll set that up for you. But I would not characterize this process as one in which the board didn't have input on which districts, after the initial maps, got moved.
Well, all right, I have an amended motion on the floor.
And that would just be to delay
until September 1.
And implement that in the following year.
Right.
And I think that's consistent with half of Ms. Kavanaugh's motion. Correct, Ms. Kavanaugh?
Yes, but like I said, I'm not prepared tonight to make a determination on dates.
I understand that, but I've made the motion, so.
Okay.
If I lose, I lose.
I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a suggestion.
Yes, sir.
Your September meeting, it might be a better day to put the deadline on rather than the 1st.
All right.
Just a suggestion.
Right.
And I'm not sure what date that
September
meeting.
4th is the first Tuesday. I don't know when that may be Labor Day.
That's probably Labor Day weekend, so it's probably going to be the 11th.
The 11th would be the next. Is that? We haven't set that date yet, but you could just say it will be at the September regular board meeting.
Yeah,
that way you don't
okay.
have to call a special board meeting to meet your deadline.
September regular board meeting. All right. So we have that motion on the floor.
It's an amendment to the motion.
It's an amended motion to postpone any decision working towards September board meeting, that we would vote at the September board meeting on a redistricting plan. Everybody clear on that? Is that the first?
That is, yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we clear on that? All right. All those in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye. 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 All opposed?
No. No.
It's 4-3 to postpone it till the September meeting. Okay.
I think we,
All right, next item on the agenda.
Did you actually vote on the final you voted on the
All right,
amendment?
we voted on the amendment, all right, then.
Procedurally, you gotta go back and vote on the
yeah.
actual amendment now,
Okay.
the actual motion.
So now the amended motion is that we will make a decision by the September board meeting of 2018. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
All right. Was it 2 or 1?
I'm one.
Okay, all right. So it was 6-1 on the amended motion. On the
Original.
original motion, yeah. All right, now, next item.
Closed session.
Closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11A1, and 115C 402.
This will be very brief.
Okay, we will adjourn.
There'll be no action coming out.
There will be no action coming out.
I'm correct in that, Wayne?